Hi, well, welcome everyone. That's our last lecture for this course, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So today we have the pleasure to have Michelle Phillips, co-founder of Yukiko Studio. As you probably know, they work across different media from paper to screen and digital, and they also have self-initiated projects and magazines that for sure you follow. Since I know she's going to introduce herself and her work, I don't stand more than this. So welcome, Michelle, and thank you for being here.
Hello. Can you hear me? Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I had the pleasure yesterday of quitting the editorial design students, and I was really, really impressed. I just think it's fantastic, all the things you're making, the things you're thinking about, you know, the content, the editorial. Oh, we can do that. Hello? 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 I didn't have the chance to do that. I only studied 3 years of design. I'm going to tell you about it in a minute. So I did a lot of learning on the job. Yeah, just quickly, probably a small introduction. I'm Michelle Phillips. I'm a graphic designer, art director, creative director of Studio Yukiko, which I also co-founded with Johannes Conrad, and I'm also a mother. So the work we do is a lot for sort of commercial clients like Nike or Camper, Hinge, VW, and so on. We make a lot of campaigns and brand identities, also for small indie projects and artists, but also for cultural institutions and museums. And of course, nearly where it all started, but not quite, we do a lot of editorial work, a lot of books, and a couple of our own titles, Flaneur magazine and Sofa magazine. So I thought, as your students, and some of you are graduating soon, I thought I would do a little bit of a different talk to the usual kind of portfolio talk. And I thought I would talk about how I got from student to studio, because it wasn't my plan, and I'm still surprised that I made it after only 3 years of study. This is not supposed to be in there, but whatever. So spoiler alert, it doesn't look like this. I mean, quick definition of success, that's a whole other talk, but I would define it, for me at least, doing something that challenges you, doing something you love, and, you know, having it sustain yourself, your finances, your mental health, you know, your physical health. But yeah, this was not my journey, and to be honest, I don't think it's many people's journey. My journey looked more like this, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about my disappointments, my failures, rejection, and fuck-ups. Awesome. It's going to be a nice talk. And you're like, why? I thought I'd talk about them because I actually think that's how I got to where I was. And it makes me sound more human. So, still why. Also, because the number of students or graduates that ask me all the time, you know, I feel stuck, I'm not getting a job, how do I get past this roadblock? There is no universal answer. I can only tell you kind of my experiences, but I might be able to tell you like a couple of things I learned along the way. Because I found myself crying a lot of the time along the journey and thinking like, you know, I felt I wasn't good enough, I felt misunderstood, I felt there were too many good designers out there to compete with. You see it on Instagram all the time. I had encounters with toxic clients, or I felt like I had run out of creativity, or I just needed more sleep. But the good news is that I did get through it all, and I'm still here, so. And I got through it with the encouragement of hamsters and friends and collaborators and mentors. Right, starting at the beginning, but not the very beginning, because we only have 1 hour, 8:30-ish. Let's see. I was a curious, enthusiastic student graduating in 2008. My portfolio looked like this. It was very rudimentary lettering explorations and a sort of weird, like, kind of word play. If you rip a poster off, it changes the sentence. or like I was getting computers to talk to each other and listen and then talk back until they had like completely written a poem. And it was, you know, cute, but completely inapplicable for a real world design industry. And I look at it now and I'm like, how on earth did I land my first job? Well, miraculously I did. So somehow, someone plucked me out of my degree show, saw a spark, they must have looked very, very hard, and put me into a design studio. And it was very badly paid, but they made album covers, which I thought was very cool, and they were responsible for this really iconic album cover, so I was really stoked. So far so good. But then the best things I was doing, don't screenshot this photograph, this will put it anywhere. It just wasn't what I had imagined. It was so far away from what I had imagined. I also did this. At the age of 21, I redesigned the Elysée logo and flew to Paris and presented it. It was like ripped apart by the design scene. But you know, who else has presented a fucking palace logo by that age? And I was sort of continuously pitching to my bosses, my clients, kind of ideas that I thought were really creative, but I had no idea how to sell those ideas or how to execute them. So after a year or so working my first job, I felt like this, and this would become a theme for many years, but it was my first introduction to the creative industry. And I was completely lost when I sort of came across this word about how these two words fit together. They're a contradiction. It didn't make sense. So like, how did you get like the creative part into like the industry part? I had no idea. Okay, I'm gonna do a little post-mortem here. Do you know what post-mortem means? Yeah, it's like in case you don't, it's like the thing when something dies, it's that examination they do to find out why. I learned this word like 3 days ago, and I thought it was so cool. I used to call it like a debrief, you know, after a project. But now I'm going to use it to death, pun intended. And you're all going to be like, kill me now. So what did I learn from that? I learned mainly this is to do with being on set. Have a clear vision. You know, if there's like cameraman and models and client looking at you, you know, you've got to tell them what to do. If it goes wrong, have a backup plan. That means have extra mood boards with you, you know, for alternative shots. And then when you're presenting, and this one is a good takeaway, when you're presenting, think of 3 points you want to make and write them down. So this is what my boss told me when I was on the plane to the Elysée Palace, because I think I was green, and he was like, she's gonna fuck this up. Anyway, so I'd met then my co-founder, my current co-founder, my partner, father of my children, sort of during this time, and we had sort of started making projects together, having a bit of, you know, creative fun or whatever, and we were like, fuck it, let's move to Berlin. He was from Germany, he'd been in England for 10 years, so we moved to Berlin, and we started taking internships everywhere, and just trying to sort of connect with the city. And we got this studio with a couple of friends, and it was 80 euros a month. It was in an old swimming pool complex. And we did it up. And our friends built like a wood workshop, and there was like screen printing down the corridor and 60mm film. And Peaches was like in the studio above us. And there was a club in the swimming pool and boiler room. It was so Berlin. It was so cool. And it was so that sort of like creativity. It was basically like being back at university. So that was awesome. So now we were set up. We needed some work, and it wasn't that easy getting work, so we just asked like all our friends, you know, what have you got, what we can do? And my old flatmate was like, well, can you do music videos? And we were like, sure. We'd never done videos, so yeah, we lied. So this began like an era of music video work. So I had, from my previous job, had experience of being on like photo shoot set, you know, making a plan, making enough mood boards, this kind of thing. So, you know, we tried to apply some of those skills to this video work thing, and we had to take on so many roles ourselves, like directing, producing, you know, making props, like sewing costumes, making masks, location scouting. We worked with owls, and I built mountains, and I mean, I look at it now and I'm like, this is so weird. This is so weird and so far away from what I do now. But anyway, we were just like pulling favors and getting friends. Well, we even got the old man like who lived 3 floors above to do like a voiceover for one of our films. And our poor apartment was the sort of location of many, many of our films. So we were really living in the middle of our work. This is me practicing. Yeah, and we didn't have enough money to hire a van. We got really good at running because we had no permits to shoot in the street. But we learned to negotiate. For every single thing, we had to negotiate for every set, for every cameraman, whatever person we worked with. We would swap work, we'd do anything. And that was an invaluable skill. So this was shot in our living room as well. We painted the walls black. We filled it with books. And it was actually, so I was also freelancing in a design studio at the time. One of the guys there had a project where he'd print a whole book on a poster. So he'd print like the whole of Das Kapital on a poster, or the whole of the Bible on the poster, or something like this. So we strapped a CNC machine. We measured out like words that we wanted to say, and then strapped a microscopic camera to a CNC machine, and then had it like track the thing. That's how we did this cool thing on the thing over there. So that was awesome and experimental, but it was also exhausting. Like, average budget was about 1,000 euros for everything. We didn't sleep much. We were doing internships, freelance, everything on the side, and we were making just no money. But then we got our first break. So the CEO of Iconoclast Germany, Iconoclast is like a huge film production company. They have like Harmony Korine on their books, you know, this kind of thing. He noticed us, and he must have looked really hard as well, because he saw a spark and started throwing us pitches. And we did so many pitches, and we lost so many pitches. We pitched on Lexus, and they stole our pitch and gave it to someone else. They stole our model as well. We pitched on this bag company, and the client literally screamed at us in the middle of the pitch and said, maybe she doesn't want to be that creative. We pitched on Yorp and won and got halfway through the job, and they couldn't deliver the clothes, and that fell through. So it was lost pitch after lost pitch after lost pitch, and we were still tired and running out of money. So quick post-mortem. Once you have a vision, get good at communicating it, problem solving, and negotiating. So despite not coming further, we were picking up a lot of skills, and we were building up a lot of networks, and we were really learning how to collaborate with people and how to share our vision, you know. And that is something that has become quite invaluable. So the next part. So one day, we're still at a Stadtbad Wedding, the swimming pool. We were clubbing in the basement, where the club is, and we met the Flaneur team. And these would become, you know, some of our best collaborators and our best friends in the world. And Ricarda, the publisher, had an idea, it's a very vague idea, about making a magazine about one street in the world per issue. She had been to New York to sort of chase her dream, and hadn't found it, and come home and realized there were way more interesting stories on her doorstep. So we thought it was a beautiful idea. So we set about making a magazine. And I'll tell you, it's not like, I had never done editorial before in my life. Never. Like, not at university, not in my previous job, never made a book, nothing. So, you know, you guys have the safe space of making your fuck ups, you know, where there are no consequences. So we didn't. But we had already tackled music videos and had made some, you know. So we were like, why not? It was a magazine that started in Berlin. It was about 1 street per issue. We traveled after Berlin to Leipzig, and then Athens and Rome and Montreal and Moscow and Sao Paulo and Taipei and Paris. And the idea was, rather than trying to understand a city or a place by covering the whole thing, if you dig down through the layers, you might learn a little bit more. And the editors would locate there for months, usually about 3 months at a time. And we would make like multiple research trips, first to find the street, then to go back and like build a network, find the collaborators. And because we had no experience of editorial design, we were working very intuitively, very much with sort of the stories we heard and how best we thought they could be translated. So rather than having sort of like long form piece, short form piece, photo story, you know, contents page, blah, 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 ours was like, let's mix this artist with this artist and see what they come up with. Oh, they came up with a recipe, you know, about a land. Let's make it into a map. Awesome. But, you know, the press found that really interesting. So we got a little bit of attention about it. And our motto was Fragments of the Street, and it was made by 90% locals, and that was very important. And we were inviting writers, artists, architects, activists, choreographers, theatre directors, shopkeepers, everyone to contribute. Anyone we thought would sort of like add a meaningful voice to sort of create a more pluralistic expression of the street, I guess. So we learned to work with people outside of the creative industry, and that was also very important for us. And we learned about concepts like psychogeography and urban acupuncture and city planning and, you know, all these like ideas of what sociological or historical or geopolitical structures, you know, sort of create tensions in a city. And this was also maybe my first introduction, because my design course did not cover any of that stuff, you know, into really dealing with content and taking it apart and understanding and trying to work with it. So we also learned to let go of our vision a little bit and let artists and non-artists in a lot more and create things together with people that you wouldn't normally create things together with. So we'd often work with a local designer as well. That was really important. Also for typesetting in Chinese or, you know, other languages. And we were constantly exploring typography and layout and sort of, you know, how to explain or exploring kind of different narrative formats. But it wasn't all exciting and travel and growth and things like this. We had to do a whole lot more negotiating and hustling. We had to pitch the magazine to like endless brands to get 1 or 2 ads. We had to go to write a bajillion cultural institutional applications for funding and things like this. We had to negotiate cheap flights with airlines. We had to negotiate with paper and printing partners and distribution networks and so forth and so forth and so forth. And if we didn't do it right, you know, the consequences were on us. But we also went back to the street every time to hold a little festival or a little party for the locals. And eventually we would hold our first Flaneur festival in Berlin, bringing 8 Taiwanese artists to Haus der Kultur in der Welt. So we were now also event hosters, so to speak. Good, post-mortem. Expand your network outside of your field. Do things without a client as a place to explore your creativity. And find inspiration offline and outside your field. That is the most important one. Find inspiration offline and outside your field. That is the only way you are going to be original or truly creative. So we still do that project, and we still do that project. We still don't make any money off it. Then our swimming pool studio got broken into. Everything got stolen, all of our laptops. We lost a lot of work. So now we're poor conceptual editorial designers, failed video makers, working from our living room. But we had one indie magazine in our portfolio and a broad network of contacts who knew people who needed work. And we had more confidence that we could tackle bigger things. So what we really needed at this point is projects with better budgets. And we got our second commercial break here. So that guy who worked at Iconoclast, the film production company, for whatever reason still believed in us, even though we failed all of his pitches. And he threw us Nike, because they were looking for someone who could do a campaign for Berlin that felt like Berlin, and they were kind of impressed at how we had dealt with other places. So we got a new studio and moved into the office with the people we did the All the World's a Page thing. Connections will become very important. They will always come around. And we did the Lauf nicht rennen campaign for Nike, which means race, don't walk. So our like 2-desk studio turned quickly into like a 6-desk studio. And we thought, okay, this is a campaign for Berliners, about Berlin, so we're gonna get Berliners to do it because, you know, we like working with other people and collaborating. So we invited about 10 artists to come to our studio and just work on the theme of race, really loosely, you know, and then just sort of give us all the parts. That's Johannes Brehr from Dynamo sitting at the end. He just went into his like sort of half-finished type files and like pulled some stuff out and was like, let's just skew this. You know, it was really cool. And then we took all those elements and we created like 64 posters or something on this theme, of which Nike chose then 10, I think. And they went back into the street and were pasted everywhere. And we thought it really fit. It really had the energy. It looked great. Berlin's a mess. So that was super. And then we pulled this apart again and turned it into another toolkit for something bigger. And this got turned into like a flagship storefront. So, you know, boom. Couple of months, we've gone from broke to Nike flagship storefront. Anyway, meanwhile, we were stupidly starting another magazine called Sofa Magazine with Ricardo, our publisher from Flaneur, because we were both like, this project's wonderful, but it's quite slow and it takes loads of work. Let's just do something fast and dirty and about internet culture. And so yeah, I was inspired by Japanese TV because, like I say, it's always good to have interests outside, you know, of the graphic design scene. And then we moved to Hamburg for 8 months and worked on a children's magazine. And this is actually where I learned the most about editorial design, or finally where I sort of professionalized, because children are really the most discerning audience and they will tell you when something doesn't work. It's also where I learned to speak German. We redesigned Sleek Mag, which was a fashion and art title, but the publisher was a little bit toxic, so quick postmortem. Do not work with toxic clients. So we were doing a lot of fun work, and you know, things were moving along. We were starting to get small budgets, working on more campaigns, and then we had our first child. So we had at that point one intern. It was 2 of us and 1 intern, and this poor intern Seb went from intern to junior designer to senior designer to running the studio in about 2 months. But now he's like my right-hand man, and sometimes he has other roles outside of graphic design in the studio. So at this point, I was 32. I was way younger than I thought I was going to have children, and we were just starting to take off, you know. And then this like thing comes along that's like, oops, like not part of the plan. So we needed to hire some more help. So then came like Ira, who we met doing the Moscow issue of Flaneur. She moved to Berlin. And then came Clara and Tonya, and who else is there? Tina, Barbara, Matt. And everyone has like different skills, different inspirations, different style, and that's wonderful. Like, I love, everyone has brought their own thing. And then 4 years later, we had our second child. And chaos ensued. But we kept going. We redesigned Cura, which was far more stripped down than some of our previous work. And at that point, we'd really learned to work for different audiences and design things with more of an intentional approach, sort of take a brief apart, not just do our wacky, crazy experimental thing all the time, but, you know, have a little bit of that, but think a little bit more about what the client needs. And we created the new identity for the House of Cultures of the World in Berlin. It's got a roof shape like this, and the original architect intended that it sort of should be like butterfly wings to sort of represent freedom of knowledge. But we also wanted to represent like its local position in the city, and it's set in the middle of Tiergarten, which is this gorgeous, huge garden. So took on this kind of like organic quality. It was also because the previous identity, which had been 13 years long, was like super brutalist and super hard, and the city loved it, and so did we. So when we had to redesign it, we were like, oh my God, everyone's gonna hate it. We were like, we have to do the furthest thing away we possibly can. But people like it, I think. Okay, so we had sort of the shape and the form. Can you see anything? Yeah. Is this gonna work? Because there's nothing here for me. Oh, I have to do this, don't I? And we wanted to like, the thing is, so when the new director came in, it was a big moment, and he really wanted, before it being quite academic and quite, I don't know, it was called the House of World Cultures, but it was very like, you know, the literary academic art scene, and he really wanted to bring this idea of like plurality, you know, and sort of like cross-pollinate knowledges from different spaces, and, you know, open up space for conversation. So having this kind of static logo just didn't feel enough, so we thought,
世界文化之家
Maison des cultures du monde.
Haus von der Kultur von der Welt.
Dom kulturmir.
House of Cultures of the World.
Casa kulturilo.
this is all the languages.
Vishwa
in our
Sanskriti
studio.
Galamar.
Sekai Bunkanoia.
Haus der Kulturen der Welt.
Yeah, so we started playing around with it and seeing what I need to say. Next. Sorry, I
世
can't see
界
what I'm
文
looking
化
at
之
here.
家
Maison
Wait, can you see this? Oh yeah. I'm playing with gesture and, you know, facial expression and things like this, to see what else we could do with it. So now we had a more fluid expression of the logo, and it felt a little bit more kind of representative of the space that HKV wanted to open up. And these are some of the opening posters, which we're very proud of. We create the identities for all of their exhibitions, and really it's some of the most enjoyable work that we do, and it was such a big moment for us because it was like doing a big cultural institution in Berlin with someone who kind of let us be sort of expressive and creative the way that I'd always hoped, you know, that we could be. But we always had to think about very complex topics and find ways to translate them in simple and engaging ways. Yeah, so the creativity part and the industry part was maybe starting to come together a little bit. Some identities were just much simpler. They don't all have to have like wildly deep concepts. This was for Day's first live event. And they've always been a magazine. They've always had their online magazine as well, but they'd never had their audience in one space. And they wanted to sort of have workshops and talks and kind of have this like idea of like creativity smashing together. So this idea was based on a spectrum. Everything's on a spectrum, creativity is smashed together. And it was really nice. It's really nice sometimes just take super simple idea and just like apply it to everything. To spatial assets like this, or like, you know, build walls, make the lenticular thing 3D. So yeah, things were working out. And then, this is a very sweet story. We'd always, when we went away on holiday, we'd always knock on a couple of agencies' doors and try and make meetings with them. And nothing ever came of it. And once we were in LA and we went to Saatchi and Saatchi, it's like this huge advertising agency that does like car ads. And we had like this one Nike project and our Flaneur magazine from Sao Paulo with us. And we were sitting in the room presenting this Flaneur magazine in front of a board of super bored people. Except one of the creative directors was like, oh my God, I'm from this street. Like, this is amazing. And he was just so warmed by it. And he was just like, can I have this? Like, you've captured it so perfectly. This is just how it feels and all of this. Anyway, it was a really nice moment. And we didn't hear anything until 4 years later. It's like, hi, it's Adriel Nunes. Remember that guy who worked at Saatchi and Saatchi? And we were like, oh, yeah. It's like, well, now I'm at DoorDash, and we're doing a magazine about neighborhoods, and would love you to do it. And this was such an amazing moment. 4 years later, like, I just couldn't believe that he remembered. So I'm a full believer that, like, what you put out into the world comes back, and, you know, eventually, it might take some time. But this was awesome because we were basically doing like a Flaneur magazine, but getting paid loads of money to do this. And we had a really big budget to hire people. And they gave us like almost like pure creative freedom. So, whoop. I'm missing the spread where I show you the spreads. It looks really good. You should check it out. It's a food magazine, by the way. Anyway, so we were having a lot of fun bringing concept and graphic and copy, together. This was for Camper. You probably know Camper. It's a great brand. They opened a hotel. They already had a hotel in Berlin. They opened a cafe, and they called it Cafe Kamalian. And we were like, okay, so if it's a hotel and a cafe, there's like all these different spaces, like you can relax, or you can work, or you can socialize, or you can like have business dinners or stuff like this. And it's a chameleon. So we were like, a chameleon has loads of different moods, but if it has loads of different moods, then it might be feeling a bit existential. And so, it just became this kind of weird nervous creature that would like wrap itself around things, or like around plates, or, under your salad. As we were working in advertising a bit, we'd become very good friends with this guy who's now the executive director of Anomaly, which is another huge advertising agency. And he was kind of like always missing like the really fun stuff. So he was basically like, if you have nice projects, I will work with you for free. So, which is amazing. He wrote a lot of the copy for some of our best projects. So it was like existential chameleon, having a crisis. You're alive, you're free, you are mortal, you are hungry. Or break the illusion of life by breaking some bread. It was very silly. All right. Do your postmortems. This is the sad bit. So I didn't do my postmortems. I was just taking jobs on, just rolling with it. I was so happy finally to be getting this creative stuff and this industry stuff together. There was children running around. And in this time, I had 2 quite serious burnouts, like really quite serious. And I was forced to stop working for a while, and I was forced to do my postmortems. But actually, it was a really amazing experience because I started reading, I started drawing again, and I started thinking about, where I started and where I got to. And then I started thinking about where I want to go next, and how much energy do I have? And I really changed after this the way I work and the way I run the studio, and I really look out for everyone that they never have this situation. Because I think it's something that creeps up on you. So the message here is do your postmortems. Anyway, like I say, I changed the way we work a bit, so now we consciously do a lot of more fun stuff, and like fun stuff for ourselves. So even this was a client project for post-modernity, everything at once. But, afterwards we were like, haha, let's shoot a stupid video to promote it. Ha 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 ha. Whoop. Right, how do I get to the next slide? Whoop. Does this work? No. Next. No, not this one. Next one. This one? I don't know what this one is. Should we find out? Oh.
Boy.
Oh yeah. This is another one we did for fun with our copywriter friend. So this is a little bit our design philosophy.
Is being a brand ever hard these days? Lost in the wilderness of a sea of sameness, a key KPI that's a little too high? Have we got the secret sauce for you? Introducing Yukiko Cream, the industry-leading design lotion. Now I know what you're thinking. How can a lotion solve all my complex design issues just by rubbing it onto my problem? Well, we start with a proprietary formula of talent, good vibes, and delicious taste. Then we pack it all into a bottle for any and all visual needs. But the secret ingredient is, well, wait, what? No, I'm sorry, I can't say that. That's really dark, guys. Stop it. How are you doing that? A hippo in a jungle. A falcon on a canyon. Shit. Okay, stop designing what I'm saying. That's not cool. Neon contrition jello soliloquy. Stop, you monsters! Stop designing my innermost thoughts and fears! No. Why, Yukiko? Why? This has been a promotion for Studio Yukiko and has been greatly exaggerated with explosive typography and product-centric metaphors for our premium design services and its application for clients such as Nike Berlin. We do not condone bullying or the maltreatment of infomercial announcers in any way, shape, or form and frown deeply on the behavior depicted in this advertisement, though in truth, sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
This way. Hang on a minute. What's next? All right. Let's do this the manual way. Slide. Right. The last thing I'm going to show you, it's a little show that we did about our work. It's the first ever time we were asked to have a little exhibition about our work. And it opened up about 2 weeks ago in Milan. And we called it Rejected, Resurrected. How fitting. So we decided to fax all our dead work to Milan. If you don't know what a fax machine is, it works on a telephone line. And it's amazing. Let's bring the fax back. I was just like, I'm faxing all my presentations to clients now. It's so cool. It's so cheap. The other thing was that, again, the budget was really low. And like the first idea was like to come up with loads of ideas. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. You know, why are we exploiting ourselves again? Why, you know, I've learnt my lessons now. So I was like, I'm not going to create any new work for this, and I'm going to do it in budget. So, yeah. So we've always archived our dead work because I'm a believer that it's just as valuable as your successful work. And it's made Studio Yukiko what it is today. And this archive is called The Graveyard. How fitting. So have a graveyard and do your postmortems. Okay, so just to wrap up, like, I'm going to do a little postmortem on this talk. You've got to understand, this is my journey. This is not universal. You know, everyone's going to have their own journey and challenges and turns and things. And I'm really not saying you should work like crazy. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying, like, you know, if you hit a roadblock, think about what happened, think about what you want to go, where you want to go, be resourceful, don't go mad. So number one, don't panic, it will be okay. Number two, collaborate and ask for help when you need it. Number three, take opportunities that challenge you. Don't be hard on yourself if the result isn't perfect. The result is never perfect. There are 100 good solutions to every design problem. Some are a little bit better, some a little bit worse. There is no perfect brief and there is no perfect client. I was always waiting for it. There isn't. Don't take it too seriously. It's supposed to be fun. Do your postmortems and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Questions?
The idea is that there are no questions at the end. That was the point.
One already.
I
Thank
told you
you.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Not yet,
I
not
laid
yet.
it all bare.
But I like gossip.
All right, go for it. Yeah, go on. Is
I
this
like
recorded?
gossip.
Are we streaming? Do I get to gossip?
No, I hope not. Anyway, well, thank you, Michelle. I really like the talk. Really, really do. I have two questions,
Yeah.
a boring one and a
Yeah.
less boring one too.
Yeah.
How do you land? The first one is, how do you land your clients? I mean, is it like you contact them, like you say, hey, I want to work with these people, and or they contact you, or How does it happen?
Not anymore. No, I try not to reply to
Okay.
new requests. No, I mean, of course, at the beginning we did everything to find clients, and so cute. Like every year we did a list, just a very small one of like projects that we'd love to do or people we'd love to work with. And the other day I was clearing out and I found the very first list that we ever did about 12 years ago, and it was so heartwarming because we checked every single item off. And we weren't very inventive then. It was like, make a book, work for a cultural institute. It was all this standard graphic design thing. But that was a cute moment, yeah. But no, now I'm quite happy if there's a quiet period, yeah.
Now, well, the second question actually is related to what you just said. Did you have like a dream project that you still want to do, that you have like in mind?
No. Get a holiday home. No,
Really?
my project now is like I'm really interested in the state of the cultural industry still, and I'm a little bit interested in sort of what is our role here now, because now like everything's kind of run by the tech industry and social media and all these. You have to hit all these like KPIs, and if you get a brief, you get like a 200 document like strategy document with it, and you're just like, Jesus, like how am I, so I think my goal is now a little bit more like refining or trying to push away from that, or seeing what we can do with brands, and can they maybe take more responsibility or risks with their content. Let's see how that goes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions?
Did answer them all.
First of all, thank you. I was wondering, you said to improve communication, that it's like something very important to work on. Do you have a specific tip or something that worked very well for you considering communication?
Did I say that? In what context did I say that? Communication to clients or to people? Or my vision?
Yeah, I feel like it was in one of the postmortems where it was like learn to communicate.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, learn to communicate. Learn to communicate. Communication is the most important thing. Communication with your colleagues, being transparent, things like this. With clients, I used to get quite emotional with them sometimes, if stuff was going wrong. That is the worst thing you can do. Like, just be like, hard facts. This is hard facts. This is what we agreed to. You owe me money. Communicating your vision is a really, really hard thing to do, because especially if you're trying to be creative and not use mood boards that already exist and not use Instagram that already exists. So that's something that took me the longest time to learn, I think, is sort of, and I wish I could tell you how to do it. I think always wrapping things up in a little bit of story helps. Like, clients don't really care about like the juicy typographic details. We do, and that's great, and that's the stuff we should take care of. But they're more concerned about like what's the bigger picture? How does this sort of fit into today's cultural context? So kind of telling them stories like, like when we did Sleek, we redesigned it. It was like really like serif-y stuff before, and we were like, yeah, Berlin's like a really hard, brutal kind of city. We need like, an awkward sans and tight margins, and it should feel like the buildings, that kind of bullshit nonsense.
Have you always had this confidence, and where do you get it from?
No, I was the shyest person in the whole world. The first time I was asked to do a talk, I nearly said no, And then because of my post-mortem, do things that challenge you, I had to say yes. And then when I got onto the stage, I ran off the stage and went down to my hotel room and threw up. And then I came back and like muddled through the most like awkward, sweatiest, but you can Google some of my talks from 10 years ago. It's like, I'm a different person. Practice, practice, practice. Have a nervous breakdown and then you won't care about anything afterwards. I swear, you won't.
Thank you.
Hi, really nice talk, first of all. And I would like to ask you, what's your approach about AI? And how do you think it will change? I'm sorry for that question, I know, but I really would like to know, like, you own a studio, what's your approach and how it's going to change the creative world?
Yeah,
I would like to see, like, your opinion on that.
I've got a lot of opinions on that, actually. Okay, so you know those, like, crap projects that I did when I was a student? I also wrote my thesis. It was called The Humanizing and Dehumanizing Effects of Technology. This is like really ambitious. And at that time, like Instagram was a baby and like Facebook was kind of rubbish and the internet wasn't that good for research and like AI was like sci-fi film or something. But I was still worried about that thing because my father was a technical illustrator who worked with airbrush and, pen and rulers. And then, he dealt with, like, Illustrator coming in and things like this. And then 3D came in, and he just didn't deal with that so well. Or I thought his work lost something, at least. So that was always on my mind. And this whole AI thing, like, when ChatGPT like first came out, I was like, oh great, now we're just gonna take the word creativity out of the industry completely, like it's just gonna be industry. And now I'm thinking a lot like, so when like Studio Ghibli, they did the Studio Ghibli thing, and then like Miyazaki was just like, this is an insult to life itself, and I think what he meant is that sort of to be truly creative or human, like you need the process. Like even if the result is the same, there's a kind of difference there. So I'm becoming again much more interested in the process of creativity and going through that because let's see if AI can replicate that. I don't know, let's see.
Okay, thank you.
That's not an answer, that's just some meandering thoughts. I mean, I don't think it can use a fax machine.
Hi, thank you. So when you showed your first designs from when you just graduated, it made me think of something I'm feeling right now as I'm finishing my master's. That is, I feel like I learned a lot during the master and I refined a lot my vision and my eye, but I still, like as a young designer, I feel like I lack the ability to get where I want. And like seeing so many amazing designers, I feel like I can tell that my work is not there yet, but as I'm young and I'm still studying, I feel my abilities are not there yet. And I wanted to know if you ever felt that gap as a young designer and how did you overcome it?
Well, again, as a young designer, or yeah. I mean, yeah. Like every time I try something new, I feel like that. It's kind of mean to do this presentation and not show you the first issue of Flaneur magazine because it's so bad. Like, it's so embarrassing. Like, I want to buy every copy and trash it. Even the second and the third one are like a complete disaster. There's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. It's a process. This is why AI won't, ever be as good as us. It's a process. Every time, when I started like advertising or working at advertising companies, I was a complete beginner again. I wasn't very good at it. You just got to keep trying and doing it. But you have to do your postmortems, right? You have to learn. You have to. It's the idea is that you ask yourself, if I did this again, what would I do better? So that's the question you need to answer, you know?
Thank you. How to actually maintain your creativity in the industry, which is really industry, and being more and more corporational and all this stuff? How to really not lose your spark?
Were you listening? I'm joking. You have to loosen your definition of creativity for a start. I mean, we solve it in maybe not the most elegant way, is that we keep doing projects that keep us creative and that keep us inspired. And we cross-finance that with projects that are less creative, but pay the bills. But every time we release a Flaneur magazine, a big client or brand comes to us and says, "Can you do that?" You know, and it's like what happened with the DoorDash thing. So that having that space to develop things that are wild, and this is kind of the thing about like, how do you convince clients to do something that's really crazy? I mean, it's so hard, but you can convince them if you've done it already, you know? And so that's easy for them to be like, oh, that's weird, but cool, you know, can you do it for us? Yeah.
Thank you so much for the talk. I'm wondering how you balance your personal projects, or not personal, but like the Yukiko's personal projects with the clients. Like, how do you approach it, and like, how do you structure it within your team as well? And do you bring the same amount, I guess, of, I don't want to say rigor, but of, yeah, I guess, rules or rigor around it?
Yeah, that's been a constant challenge, because client work always has a deadline tomorrow, you know, but we have so all our projects, we work usually obviously in our programs, and we put everything in Google Slides, and we have a workbook for every project where everyone throws out, and these workbooks are like 500 pages long, but we also have a workbook for thought starters, which are just like someone has a fun idea, they put a page in the workbook, which is one sentence on the idea and like a couple of scribbles or whatever. And then we have this thing called Compass catch-ups once a month, and we look through the thought starters and we say like, which one of this is good, which one do we want to work on, like, you know, and then who's in charge of it and how do we plan it, and this is how we do it. In terms of like making space for time, we've started working with these two amazing girls called Nia Cosma, who specialize in holistic finance and the creative industry. And so we're time tracking everything now, and not for the boring thing of like, you know, keeping an eye on each other, but like for seeing where we can carve out space to fit this work in, you know, and how does it kind of work with the finances. And it's super complicated, like, kind of like, don't worry about it yet. But that was kind of to answer your question, what are my goals next? Like, my goals is to really get that down, like to really, you know, have the room to make it a regular practice of sort of experimenting. But are we getting a Rizzo machine next week as well?
So I know a lot of people do, they say that you need to have like the kind of projects you want to make in your portfolio. Do you feel like you had to create projects that you weren't going to earn any money on just to make sure that you could get the clients for the kind of projects that you wanted?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. The magazine thing, yeah, for sure. We wanted to do editorial design. That was a dream. Yeah, it doesn't. You don't have to make the project. I think the small goals every year thing is really good, like 1 or 2, because then you're like, you know, I want to work with like a cultural institution. Then you call all your friends and you're like, who knows anyone who works there, and how can I get them a portfolio or like have a meeting or you know something, or you talk to someone who already does that work and you ask them like what's the best way to go about this. You just got to like, you've got to have a like the have a vision thing is like, you know, you've got to know what you sort of want to aim for, like not like fucking I want to have a studio in 20 years, but like, you know, this year I want to do that, and then you write a little like, you know, possible ways to get there plan, and then if someone says to you, you have to have done it before, then you you know, make a pretend one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hey, I have a question. When you said you want to go to the Saatchi and Saatchi, which is hilarious, I actually was a junior designer there like years ago.
I'm so sorry.
No, I know. I did not
Do you
like
work on
it.
car ads?
What'd you say?
Do you work on car ads?
No, I was doing like, I don't know. I was in like the more like sports agency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it was a long time ago. And so, how do you, like when you go to a city, like you said, on vacation or whatever, and you're wanting to connect with some of those agencies in a new city, like, I guess, yeah, like that's an awesome, interesting concept that I would like to do, but like how would you kind of approach that? And of course some probably wouldn't answer, but how would you approach it in general?
I mean, we don't, actually, no, we do. Johannes is going to New York next week. If you have any contacts that we can get in touch with, that's how you do it. Like, if you're going somewhere, you ask the person you know from that place or in that industry or in that field, have you got any contacts I can reach out to? And there's LinkedIn now as well, which is, you know, is like a networking thing. Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thank you. I had so much fun listening to you. It was very inspiring. And second of all, you said that we should inspire ourselves, like enjoying and doing creative, fun stuff. But have you got in mind any place specific for us to look for references or, I don't know, creativity in specific?
I should stop saying things. I think that's up to you to find them. I think I get my most inspiration from streets and weird things that happen in streets and bad logos on street signs. But that's because I did Flaneur and I was really interested in this people who design without a design education, you know. I think it's quite beautiful because it's actually the most functional design. They're just like, you know, this needs to be really big and readable. Of course it does, and yellow. So, you know, they know what they're doing more than we do in a way. So that's where I get my inspiration. I also get my inspiration from Japanese TV because I'm half Japanese and I grew up with that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's up to you. I don't know if you're interested in nature. Like go walk in nature, I'm serious. Like there's systems in nature. You know so one of our identities from Flaneur was there was that big what's that clever fungi? Come on, the clever fungi who like mapped the Tokyo subway underground. You know. Yeah, nearly. Yeah, exactly. Mycelium. So, you know, and there's a whole discourse about like decentralized networks and, you know, working, you know, and this is all nature inspired. It's all like we can work better and more efficiently rather than top down, but like spreading knowledge out. So, yeah, like, so we reference a lot of that, like nature for some of our more like small kind of, yeah, cultural stuff.
Last question.
Thank you. I want to ask you, how do you do to use like a funny tone of voice in some projects without getting bored of your, like after checking many times?
Yeah, I do sometimes. I'm like, oh, let's not, like, this is kind of getting a bit embarrassing now. Then you put a serious project in the middle. We do a lot of serious projects. It's not as a fun talk material. But we do. I don't know. The world is so serious, no? I just try and enjoy a bit the work part because it's so many hours. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if this talk is. Yeah.
Very last question. The Saidera question. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. You've been so nice. Thank you.